Hello everyone, let's talk about the Indian Constitution. In this module, I am going to discuss about the Constituent Assembly, the Indian Constitution and the need for the Constitution. So let's start with the Constituent Assembly. What was this Constituent Assembly? A Constituent Assembly is actually a group of people who are brought together to prepare to make a constitution for a country. So, a group of people who are going to frame a constitution for their country, they will be called as Constituent Assembly. The Constituent Assembly, in case of India, if we are talking about, it consisted of indirectly elected representatives. And this Constituent Assembly was set up for the purpose of drafting a constitution for undivided India. Now, when we are talking about Constituent Assembly in case of India, the members of this Constituent Assembly were learned men and women, and they represented different political parties. They belonged to different sections of the Indian society. There were legal experts, there were social workers, nationalist leaders, educations. So there were different people from different backgrounds in the membership of Constituent Assembly. But why we were having so much diversity in the Constituent Assembly just for framing a constitution? Why? Why? Because the India, which is actually a home of so many different religions and is having such a huge diversity among its people, where so many different caste, different people of different economic status and social background are living, it was very necessary that people from most of the backgrounds, most of the different categories are there in the Constituent Assembly so that they are able to understand the problems and what could be the solution for the problems of their category of people in India, and they could frame the rules, frame the regulations, provide the provisions for the solution of those type of people. So in our Constituent Assembly, we were having variety, diversity of learned men and women. Now, when India gained independence, this Constituent Assembly served as the first parliament, and we had Dr. B.R. Ambedkar as the chairman, as the head of the drafting committee. You can see in this picture that even the Postal Department of India had recognized the work done by Dr. B.R. Ambedkar in framing, in heading the making of Constitution of India. Now let's see how the Constituent Assembly actually looked like when it started its working in 1946. Now in these two pictures you can see how the members of our Constituent Assembly are attending a meeting, which is actually where you can find in the second picture that Mr. Jawaharlal Nehru, our first Prime Minister, is referring to the members. Now you can see that the first day of the Constituent Assembly, that is the day when we actually started with the functioning of this assembly, of this group of people, when they started actually conferencing and discussing on the matters related to the creation of the constitution, it was on 9th December 1946. And the last session of the assembly was held in November 1949. That is when we have completed with our making of the constitution. So that was our last session. Now let's see, what is this constitution? The constitution, we are talking about making of constitution by the members of the Constituent Assembly, but what is this constitution? In very simple terms, this constitution is actually a set of rules, regulations, whatever provisions, laws that are framed for each and every person of the country to follow. So that what are the rules that the government different organs of the government are going to perform. So this is about the constitution, and from where we have derived this term. It has been derived from the Latin word constitutio, which means regulations and orders. Now you can see from the slide that the constitution is a set of basic fundamental laws according to which a country is governed. That is, whatever laws our political leaders are framing, are making, are according to this constitution. This constitution is actually defining the form of government, the powers and functions of the various organs of the government, what will be the relationship between the state and the individual. All these is reflected in our constitution. The constitution forms the basic guideline for the functioning of any democracy. Now let's talk about the Indian Constitution. It was passed on 26th November 1949. Remember this date, that is the day when we actually completed with the working, with the framing, with the making of our rules and regulations and provisions. That is on 26th November 1949, we had completed our making of Indian Constitution and we were ready to adopt our constitution that was made by the members of the Constituent Assembly. You can see the second point, it came into effect on 26th January 1950. That is, this was the day when the constitution was formally enacted. It came into force on 26th January 1950. And this is actually the day when our first President of India started his first term of office for the Indian Union. That he started as the President of the Indian Union from this day, that is 26th January 1950. And on this day, India became a republic. This is the reason why we celebrate our Republic Day. Now, you can see that the constitution was drafted between 1946 and 1949. So you remember that in our previous slide, I have shown you that on 9th December 1946, we started with the working of the Constituent Assembly, the first day of the Constituent Assembly. And the last day when we were completed with the making, it was 26th November 1949. So between 1946 and 1949, that is the members of the Constituent Assembly were making the constitution, were writing the constitution, discussing the constitution. So you can just see that it took around 2 years, 11 months and 17 days for the Constituent Assembly to finally adopt and enact the constitution. Our constitution, that is the Indian Constitution, is a written constitution. If you talk about UK, that is Britain, they don't have a written constitution. Whenever the principles of whatever rules and regulations are in the form of written way, that is your written constitution. Our constitution has been inspired across the world by constitutions across the world, keeping in mind the special needs of the Indian people. That is, we have borrowed various principles, ideas that is there in our constitution from the constitutions of different countries. For example, we have taken the concept of parliamentary form of government that we will study later on, rule of law, from the British Constitution. We have taken the concept of fundamental rights and the federal structure of government, independence of the judiciary, from the USA Constitution. So you can see that we have taken so many major ideas that is there in our constitution from the constitutions of different countries of the world. We have also taken the directive principles from the Irish Constitution and the ideals of liberty, equality and fraternity that is mentioned in our preamble from the French Constitution. So we are actually borrower of so many main ideas of our constitution. In India, the Supreme Court is the upholder of the constitution. Now, what is the meaning of upholder? Simple, whenever the fundamental rights of any person in India is violated by any other person, or maybe by any organization, or even by the government, state government or central government, that person can directly go to the Supreme Court to complain and get it properly done. So that means Supreme Court is actually the upholder of the constitution. Let's see more. You can see that in this slide there are two pictures of the preamble of the Constitution of India. Now, what is this preamble first? The preamble is actually an introduction of the Constitution of India. That is, it tells us the basic philosophy, the basic ideas, values, beliefs on the basis of which the members of Constituent Assembly have framed the Constitution. Now, here in the first picture, you will find that it's written, "We, the people of India." You can just imagine that we are starting with the written content of our Constitution with the terms, "We, the people of India." That is, so much of focus is given to the population, to the citizens of the country, because we are electing our representative, isn't it? So there is so much power in the hands of people of India. They are electing their representative, and whenever they want, they can remove them also from the power. Now, in the first picture, you will see that there are terms sovereign, democratic, and republic that is written. Now, the term socialist, secular, and unity and integrity of the nation was adopted to the preamble in the year 1976. You can see in the second picture, I have made an underline on the terms that were adopted by the preamble, in the preamble, by the 42nd Amendment Act of 1976. Socialist, secular, and the unity and integrity of the nation. These terms were added in 1976. So this is the introduction, the preamble that you may find in many of your NCERT books, isn't it? In the first few pages, there is a page which is devoted for printing the preamble of the Constitution of India. Now let's move ahead. The Indian Constitution, some more facts about the Indian Constitution. It took around 11 sessions and 165 days of discussion for our members of this Constituent Assembly, and there were 299 members of our Constituent Assembly who were in charge of making our rules and regulations. Now, we can find that it is the longest written constitution in the world. That is, it is having 395 articles in 22 parts. It was when we started with the constitution, but right now in 2020 we are having 448 articles, and there are around 104 amendments that are being done to our constitution. The first amendment was done in the year 1951, with the First Amendment Act was enacted to protect the zamindari abolition. Now, there was one more amendment that was done which is very important, that is the 86th Amendment Act that was done in the year 2002, which gave the right to education to our children of India. So we find that it is the longest written constitution. Why longest? Again, with such a diverse country, it needed to satisfy the needs and give the solutions to the problems of every category of people. Now, the Indian Constitution provides its every citizen 6 fundamental rights, and it has a preamble capturing its spirit. Now, let's move ahead and see more. Why do we need a constitution for any country? What is the need? The first need is that before I start with the need of the constitution, let's talk about an example. For example, if you are living in some residential society, there will be some rules and regulations that each and every family of that residential society is following, isn't it? Otherwise, what will happen if every family starts behaving and doing whatever they want? Then there will be so much chaos and there will be so much disturbance and so much, maybe there can be some fights among the families. So in order to have smooth functioning of that residential society, there are some rules and regulations framed by that society, isn't it? Even if you talk about the your school's almanac, school's diary, you will find that there are so many rules and regulations written for the students, for the teachers, maybe for the coordinators, for principal, for staff members, and there are so many aims, goals, or objectives written for the organization, isn't it? Why? So that there is proper functioning of the organization in the benefit of the society, of the country. So the rules and regulations are required in each and every organization that is there in the world. Even if I want to play any game, for example, cricket, hockey, or maybe carom, there are some rules that the players have to follow. Otherwise, there will be so much of confusion that what any person is doing. So there is importance of constitution also in our country, so that every person is following certain rules, guidelines that is framed in the for the benefit of the country. So let's start with the first one, that is the constitution defines the basic nature of our society. That is, it reflects the aspirations, the desires of the citizens of a country. Accordingly, it lays down certain ideals that constitute the philosophy of the constitution. For example, the Constitution of India gives all its citizens justice, liberty, and equality of status and opportunity, isn't it? Second point, it describes the ideals which are necessary. That is, the Constitution outlines the ideals that bind the diversity of people and communities together. It defines the nature of the country's political system. That is, what type of government will be there, whether it will be a democratic government, monarchy, or we are going to follow dictatorship. All this is specified in the Indian Constitution. And it also specifies, gives in detail the functions, the powers, and the limitations of the different organs of the government. In case of India, it is executive, legislative, and judiciary. Now, the fourth point is it protects against the misuse of power and authority through checks and balances. That is, the person, the government, the political leaders who are in power, they may misuse their authority, their power, by putting some exertions on some non, you can say, which is not beneficial for the maximum people of the country. So the constitution contains safeguards against the misuse of political power by political leaders and those in power. Now, the next one, that is, it prevents the tyranny or domination of the minority by the majority. That is, the constitution gives to minorities a right to preserve their language, their culture. Moreover, it may make some special provisions for their improvement. For example, in case of India, women, children, backward classes, SC, ST, OBC, Muslims, these are minority groups, and the constitution provides certain provisions, initiatives to these people to give them equal status. And the constitution tries that there is no domination done by one community on another, that is your intra community domination, and there is no domination of members of one community over members of the same community just because they are minority in number. That is intra, that is your intra community domination. So inter community domination and intra community domination is prevented, is checked by the constitution. There is one more which is very important. Why do we need the constitution? That is, it prevents us from ourselves. Now what is this? What the constitution is doing to prevent us from ourselves? It's very simple. The constitution helps us to protect us against certain decisions that we might take that could have an adverse effect on the larger principles that the country believes in. A good constitution actually does not allow that people change its basic structure. So these are some of the needs, the requirement why we require a constitution for a democratic country like India. Now let's look at through some examples also. Let's see. The constitution is the supreme law of the land and source of all power. No law can be made in the country which goes against its basic structure. That is, whatever law our political leaders are making, it should be completely and strictly under the guidelines of the Constitution of India. Next part, that is, the Constitution ensures that the democracy sustains and survives by giving its citizens the universal adult franchise through which governments are made or unmade under the supervision of an independent election commission. That is, we citizens of India are given the right to vote and choose our representatives fairly in elections, and we are the ones who can actually remove them also if they are not working properly for our welfare. So the constitution is giving every citizen of India the right to vote, that is your UAF. Now let's see few examples that is given in your NCERT book to understand the need to provide safeguard against the misuse of authority. Here in this picture we can see that there is a class monitor Suresh who tries to misuse his power as class monitor against one student, that is Anil. Let's see. Suresh is the class monitor. He is a bully. His classmates are not too fond of him. Mrs. Rao, the class teacher, has to leave the classroom on some urgent work. She asks Suresh to mind the class. Suresh starts picking on Anil. Anil, today I am going to report you to Mrs. Rao. But what have I done? Now, when Mrs. Rao returns to the class, this boy is trying to make bad image of Anil in the eyes of his class teacher. Ma'am, while you were away, Anil kept talking loudly and disturbing the class. He would not listen to me. Now see how the teacher is reacting because she is trusting the class monitor. Anil, you will have to stay back after school today and write, I will not disobey the class monitor 100 times. But ma'am, I did not do anything. So in this example, you can see how Suresh is trying to misuse his power against some people, some members of his class. Now let's see another need for the constitution, that is, dominant group does not use its power against other less powerful people. Here in this example you will see that the boys are playing whatever they want. They are not giving chance to girls and other minority groups of their school to play what they want, and they are not happy with that. So you will see how dominant group in India also, they don't dominate on others. For that, there are so many rules and regulations that is written in our constitution. I hope the concept of Constituent Assembly, what is the constitution, and the need for the constitution is quite clear to you all now. Thank you so much.